You hear it before you see it. The shallow, rhythmic gasps of a child fighting a battle she was never meant to fight. The air is thick with candle smoke and the metallic scent of blood. You are inside the chamber, watching a 12-year-old girl writhe on a bed of linen and faith. Somewhere, a midwife whispers, "Hail Mary, full of grace," and you wonder if grace could ever reach a child condemned by destiny. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, from the quiet of your room, or perhaps a cafe half a world away, take a moment to marvel at this. History connects us through pain and power, across centuries and continents. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and join this global circle of dark histories where forgotten stories still breathe. Now, return to the chamber. It is the year 1457, and the girl's name is Margaret Beaufort. Outside, the winter wind rattles the shutters of Bletsoe Castle, while inside, the air hums with quiet panic. She clutches the bedpost with fingers too small for a wedding ring, too fragile to bear the weight of a nation. Her husband, Edmund Tudor, is dead, a casualty of war and ambition, and she, his child bride, is left to deliver a legacy in his stead. The midwives exchange uneasy glances. No one says it aloud, but they know the truth. This birth could kill her. The child inside her is full-sized, the mother is still a child herself. Her cries echo through the corridor, bouncing off cold stone and into history's memory. Somewhere, an older servant mutters, "If she lives, she will never be the same." And she doesn't. Hours later, a boy's thin wail pierces the silence. Henry Tudor, frail, red-faced, and crying, is lifted into the world by trembling hands. Margaret's eyes flutter open just long enough to see him before she collapses back onto the blood-soaked sheets. Her body is broken, but her spirit, the one thing no man could claim, has already begun to harden. They will call her a mother of kings, but she begins as a mother of pain. As dawn stains the windows with gray light, Margaret lies still, staring at the rafters. She has survived, barely. Her voice is little more than a whisper when she says to her nurse, "He shall serve God." Yet even then, the words sound less like devotion and more like prophecy. In the months that follow, her household treads lightly around her, this strange child widow who now walks with the dignity of a woman twice her age. Her education resumes, but something fundamental has shifted. She writes letters with a calm hand and listens with unsettling focus when politics are discussed. The court thinks her meek. They are wrong. England itself is bleeding. The Wars of the Roses rage between Lancaster and York, two branches of a royal tree rotting from within. Men trade oaths like currency. Loyalties last as long as convenience allows. But Margaret, bound to Lancaster through her Beaufort blood, is already calculating survival. She knows the tides of fortune are fickle, and that her son's life depends on reading them before they turn. When Henry is taken from her, placed under the care of other nobles for his protection, she does not protest. Her face remains composed, but her hands shake beneath her sleeves. Every goodbye is a quiet rehearsal for war. She writes him letters, small, careful prayers disguised as advice. "Trust few," she warns, "and remember always who you are." Years pass. She remarries out of necessity, first to Sir Henry Stafford, then to Thomas Stanley, a man whose influence at court makes him both a shield and a snake. She learns the art of stillness, how to listen while others speak, how to pray while others plot. Her faith deepens, but so does her ambition. To her, they are one and the same. God's will and her will become indistinguishable. Sometimes, at night, she dreams of that first birth, of the candlelight flickering against stone walls, of her own screams filling the room. She wakes with her palms pressed together, whispering the same phrase over and over. It was not for nothing. Because she understands now, that moment of agony was the seed from which England's next chapter will grow. Her child will rise not through luck or mercy, but through the meticulous faith and quiet ruthlessness of his mother. In court, whispers follow her like shadows. Some say she is pious to the point of madness. Others call her the true architect of Tudor destiny. Both are right. She moves through corridors draped in black, a living reminder that sanctity and ambition can share the same skin. And still, she waits. Every rumor of rebellion, every new claimant to the throne, she measures them all against the dream she refuses to let die. Her son, Henry, is across the sea, exiled and hunted. But she knows something the world does not. Destiny bends for those who refuse to yield. So she lights her candles. She prays for him, and in the cold glow of the flame, the girl who once screamed for mercy becomes a woman whispering strategy to God. History will remember kings and battles, crowns and betrayals. But it began here, in the dim light of a winter morning, where a child bore both pain and prophecy. And somewhere in that silence between her screams and her son's first cry, the Tudor dynasty took its first breath. The castle smells of wax and cold stone. Every corridor is a cathedral to silence, broken only by the soft rustle of black silk as Lady Margaret Beaufort moves through it. The widowed countess wears mourning as armor, her garments plain, her expression unyielding. Yet beneath that solemn exterior lies a pulse of calculation, steady as a heartbeat. She is England's most dangerous kind of woman, one who believes that her will and God's are the same. It is 1471. The House of Lancaster has fallen. King Henry VI is dead, murdered in the Tower. His son, the hope of the cause, lies slain on the battlefield. The White Rose of York has triumphed, and Margaret's world has turned to ash. Her own son, Henry Tudor, is now the last surviving male heir of the Lancastrian bloodline. At barely 14, he flees across the sea to Brittany, leaving his mother behind in a court ruled by her enemies. And yet, she does not despair. Those who know her mistake her composure for submission. But Margaret has learned from a lifetime of powerlessness that obedience can be the perfect disguise. She bows, she smiles, she kneels, and she listens. Every sermon, every whispered exchange between courtiers, every tremor in the political wind. She memorizes it all. Her faith gives her purpose, but her losses have taught her strategy. God gives the crown, she once murmured to her confessor, but he gives it through those who act in his name. Her prayers are long and fervent, yet behind every amen hides intent. She funds priests who preach Lancaster's rightful claim under the veil of piety. She cultivates allies among those disillusioned with King Edward IV's excesses. Even her husband, Thomas Stanley, the shrewd nobleman who commands men and fears no one, learns to tread carefully around her. When he looks into her eyes, calm, cold, unwavering, he understands that devotion can be a blade sharper than treason. Her candlelit chambers become her war room. She corresponds in cipher, her words carefully chosen to evade suspicion. Her servants are loyal not by fear, but by faith, convinced that they serve a woman chosen by God to restore order to a bleeding nation. When questioned by Yorkist spies, she folds her hands and answers softly, "I am but a humble widow." The lie tastes holy in her mouth. England, meanwhile, teeters between peace and collapse. Edward IV's rule grows corrupt. His brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, sharpens his ambitions. And through this growing fracture, Margaret sees her moment. Her son, Henry, must not remain in exile. She writes to his guardians in Brittany, "He shall come home when England remembers her rightful line." The words are both promise and prophecy. When King Edward dies suddenly in 1483, the kingdom erupts in uncertainty. Richard seizes the crown, declaring his young nephews illegitimate. The princes vanish into the Tower, never to be seen again. And as England mourns, Margaret moves. She meets secretly with Elizabeth Woodville, the widowed queen of the late Edward IV. two women on opposite sides of war, a Lancastrian mother and a Yorkist queen, sit in the shadow of the same grief. Candlelight flickers between them as Margaret whispers her plan. "Let your daughter wed my son," she says, "and together they shall heal this realm." It is the boldest alliance of the century, a marriage that would unite the red rose and the white, a union born not of love, but of exhaustion, desperation, and calculation. Still, every step is perilous. Richard's spies multiply, rumors coil through court like smoke. When her letters are intercepted, Margaret claims ignorance. When her allies are executed, she prays louder. Richard orders her lands confiscated, but even stripped of property, she remains untouchable, guarded by the same husband who now plays both sides with deadly precision. Thomas Stanley knows his wife's schemes are treasonous. He knows her ambition could end them both. Yet, curiously, he never betrays her. Perhaps he recognizes in her a force that transcends politics, a quiet inevitability, the sort that history itself bends around. Years of intrigue narrow to a single point. Bosworth Field, 1485. Henry Tudor returns from exile, his banner fluttering beneath the red dragon of Cadwallader. Margaret is not there, but her shadow stretches across the battlefield. Stanley's troops stand poised between the two sides, their allegiance uncertain. At the crucial moment, they turn. Richard III falls. When the crown is lifted from the mud and placed upon Henry's head, the first Tudor king breathes, and across England church bells begin to toll. In that sound, Margaret hears divine confirmation. Her son's victory is her vindication. The years of scheming, the lies told in prayer, the alliances bought with faith and fear, all of it now sanctified by success. She signs her letters Margaret R., not for Queen, but for Regina Mater, the Queen Mother. She attends Mass daily, endows colleges, and cloaks her legacy in piety. Yet in the silence of her private chapel, surrounded by flickering votive candles, she sometimes stares at the crucifix and wonders, did she serve God, or did she merely use his name? The wax drips. The air smells of smoke and iron. England kneels to a new dynasty, unaware that it was birthed not only by conquest, but by a woman who learned to pray like a saint and plot like a sovereign. And somewhere, beyond the reach of the bells, the widow who played God whispers her final confession, not to a priest, but to history itself. The bedchamber is quiet, save for the slow creak of wood as the wind presses against the shutters. Lady Margaret Beaufort kneels before an empty bed, her son's bed, the sheets untouched since the day he fled across the channel. A candle burns beside her, its flame trembling with every whisper of her prayer. Her hands are clasped, her eyes half open, and her voice carries the weight of 2 decades of longing. Every word she utters is both plea and command, half to God, half to herself. She has not seen her son, Henry Tudor, in nearly 14 years. He is a phantom now, a young man grown in exile shaped by foreign courts and constant danger. But in England, his name is a rumor, a spark that refuses to die. For those who despise the Yorkist rule, he is more than flesh and blood. He is prophecy incarnate, and his mother, the architect of that prophecy, is already at work turning whispers into war. It begins not on a battlefield, but at her writing desk. The smell of beeswax and parchment fills the air as she seals another letter in red wax. The script is fine, deliberate. A message to John Morton, Bishop of Ely, disguised as a prayer of endurance. Hidden within the lines are instructions, contacts, funds. Every courier she trusts, every coin she moves, every alliance she spins, each act cloaked in the sanctity of faith. Those who meet her at court see only the pious widow, always in black, murmuring her rosary. But beneath the veil lies the pulse of a strategist. She has learned how to navigate men's worlds by making herself invisible, a ghost in the corridors of power. Her allies are merchants, bishops, and disillusioned nobles who have learned to read the language of her silence. "England bleeds beneath false kings," she says softly to a visiting priest, her tone serene, but her eyes sharp. "If God has mercy, he will raise the rightful heir." The priest nods, uncertain whether he has heard a prophecy or a threat. In Brittany, Henry grows restless. Letters reach him by candlelight. Messages from his mother, sealed with a red wax rose. They are full of guidance, warnings, and scripture. But between the verses lies a deeper current, a command to endure, to wait for the moment when heaven and opportunity align. Margaret writes, "The Lord shall deliver you in his time. But remember, his time comes only through our labor." Every night she prays before the same crucifix, her lips moving in rhythm with the ticking of the clock. Her servants hear her whisper his name, "My son, my king." Yet she never allows emotion to weaken resolve. The mother's love that nearly destroyed her as a child bride has now hardened into something else. Conviction, weaponized. In the years before Bosworth, Margaret's correspondence becomes the nervous system of rebellion. Gold flows quietly from her estates into the hands of men who speak of restoration. Nobles from the South and West pledge their allegiance under the seal of her approval. Even the Stanleys, her own family by marriage, walk a careful line between loyalty and treason, knowing her eyes are upon them all. England is tired. Famine, plague, and corruption have hollowed out its core. The people pray for deliverance, and in their despair, they begin to whisper of a figure across the sea, a prince guided by divine right. Margaret does not have to lift a sword. Her faith alone commands the narrative. When Richard III seizes the throne, her prayers become sharper, more dangerous. She kneels each morning at dawn and whispers, "Let the wicked be confounded." To her, Richard's rise is not political, but blasphemous. A usurper wearing her son's crown. Her confession grows more intimate, more fervent, until it blurs the line between devotion and design. In 1483, the moment arrives. Word reaches her that the two York princes have vanished into the Tower. Their disappearance poisons Richard's claim and fractures his support. Margaret moves swiftly. Her messenger rides to the widowed Queen Elizabeth Woodville, offering what no man would dare, a union between their bloodlines. A pact is born in candlelight. Henry Tudor will marry Elizabeth of York, uniting red and white, Lancaster and York. It is the perfect illusion of peace, crafted by the one woman who has never believed in peace at all. For months, her agents travel under false names, her messages hidden within psalms. Her husband, Thomas Stanley, pretends neutrality, but his troops begin to drift closer to Henry's cause. Every chess piece moves, guided by her invisible hand. Then comes August 1485. The sky over Bosworth darkens with storm and steel. Margaret waits far from the field, her rosary cold against her skin. She knows before any messenger arrives, something in the air changes, a stillness that feels like judgment. When the news comes, it is carried not by words, but by sound. Bells. Across the countryside, church bells ring for a new king, Henry VII. Her son has triumphed. Her war, waged in silence, in prayer, and in shadows, has ended in victory. In that moment, she does not weep. She simply kneels. The candle beside her flickers as she whispers, "It is finished." But even as England celebrates, something in her remains restless. She walks through her chambers, the air thick with incense and memory. The crown she dreamed of has found its head, yet peace eludes her. For every prayer answered, a sin lingers. Margaret knows she will be remembered as a saint, the pious mother who birthed a dynasty through faith. But saints do not trade in blood and betrayal. Saints do not forge crowns in exile and sanctify their schemes with Scripture. The candle guttered, and the room dimmed to shadow. Somewhere in the silence, her voice lingers, neither confession nor absolution, only truth. God did not choose me to be pure. He chose me to prevail.